Hello, 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 my dear people, empaths and highly sensitive people. Thank you for following my work once again, and of course, as usual, being my client. So, once again, I have a mediumship video here for you guys. So, this was an idea that popped up to me a while ago that I would do a mediumship session with Jack the Ripper's victims or with the actual killers. But I ended up doing this with a few of the victims. So I didn't want to bother all of them, so I just asked questions to a few of the victims. And I'm gonna be telling you here the results. So, if you don't know the story of Jack the Ripper, he was this very famous serial killer in 1888. He killed 5 women, 5 prostitutes who were actually alcoholics, all of them. Drinking gin was very popular then at that time. So that is what they spent their money on. They were drinking gin daily. So you can imagine where their money went when they were supposed to be paying for rent or, to stay over someplace because they did not have their own homes. At that time in London, nobody actually did have their own homes. They had to be renting some rooms where to stay. At least the poor people didn't. So it was pretty wild at that time, and there were like 1,200 prostitutes at that area, in the Whitechapel area where this happened. So the Whitechapel murders also include a few more victims, but I'm only going to be talking about these 5 women on this video because they are the famous women that Jack the Ripper officially killed. So I'm only talking about them on this video because I want to make this as clear and short as possible. So I don't want to dig too much into details that don't really matter here, because the point is to just give you guys the right information about who Jack the Ripper is and also what happened with the victims, basically. So there were a few issues that I wanted to dig into, so that is why I wanted to connect with their spirits and to ask a few questions from them. So I will just start here telling you guys a bit about the women. So the first victim was Mary Ann Nichols, and she died on 31st of August 1888, and she was found on 3 a.m. in the morning. So she had been very drunk as usual, and actually a friend had offered to pay for her stay over, the 4 pence, that was the price, but she declined, and she just wanted to go out to make some money. She wanted to sell sex and gain some clients and have her own money. And she was 42 years old. So I really feel that she was like a very independent soul. So that is why she did not want any help. She was like, okay, I can do this on my own. I'm a grown, independent, strong woman and I can do this. And I feel a very stubborn soul as well. So that was Marianne Nichols, or Polly Nichols. They also called her Polly Nichols. But yeah, so she wanted to go off on her own. And that was about at midnight when she last saw her friend, who was also a prostitute. And about 3 hours later, she died. She was found dead, you know. So everything happened pretty quickly. All of these murders happened pretty quickly. And suddenly, without any expectation. She was found on Box Row. That address has changed since then. But that was the name that was then. And it looked like she had been raped. Her skirt was up and her lower body had been mutilated and her throat had been slit through and through, both ways. That is actually the way that Jack the Ripper really struck. He killed these women by attacking them with a knife and cutting their throats. So he did not need any sort of poison or something to make them sleep. He just attacked them and cut their throats. So it was pretty simple in that way. The second victim was Annie Chapman. She was actually the oldest one. And she was actually having tuberculosis. So she was badly sick. And they said that she only had like 3 weeks left to live. So she would have died anyway after a while. So in a way that is comforting to know that she didn't have a long life to live for. But yeah, she was killed in September 8th, 1888. So it was like a week and a half after the first murder of Marianne Nichols. And she was 48, so she was the oldest of all of these 5 women. Jack the Ripper took her uterus. With Marianne Nichols, he didn't take any organs. He just did some mutilation. But with Annie, he took her uterus with him. She was found at 5:30 a.m. 6 a.m. 6 a.m. She was seen at 5:30 alive the last time, but she was found at 6 a.m. dead. And on Hanbury Street. So that is actually the same name that still is there. The street still bears that same name, so they have not changed it. So at 6 a.m. in the morning she was found. And the third victim, Elizabeth Stride. She was 44 years old. She was found on 30th of September, 1888. So almost a month later, like 3 weeks later. And she was found on Burner Street. That is also by a different name nowadays. Jack the Ripper had only cut her throat and didn't do anything else. And this is because he did not have time to. There were actually 3 men, and one of them was a police officer who had seen Elizabeth with some men, a man or men. So 3 eyewitnesses had been there seeing her with some men. So obviously this caused Jack the Ripper to be scared off, that he noticed that, okay, this is not a good space for me to act because I will get caught. So he had to flee from that area, and that is why he could only slit Elizabeth's throat and didn't do anything else to her body. She was found at 1 a.m., so it happened pretty quickly. She was basically seen alive at midnight, around midnight. And it all happened very fast. Then Jack the Ripper struck again, the second time that same night, because he was not satisfied, because he was not able to do any mutilation or anything like that. So he had to have another victim. And that happened to be Catherine Eddowes, who was 46 years old, also a prostitute, also a bit drunk. And she was found 1:45 a.m. So these happened pretty closely to one another, these murders. He took her kidney with him. Yeah, with him. And she was killed and found on Maybrick Square. Then the final victim, 5th victim, was Mary Jane Kelly. She was the youngest of these ladies. She was 25 years old. She was actually in her apartment that she had rented when she was killed and found. She was found at 10:45 a.m. by her landlord, who was coming to claim the rent because she had not been paying the rent for a while. And that happened on the 9th of November, 9th of November, 1888. So it was over a month and a week, month and a week and a half after the last murders. So you can imagine that people were not even expecting this. And it was the most horrific death, the most horrific murder that you can just imagine to happen at that area. And, you know, like in life generally, because she had been so badly mutilated. You can actually see the photo online. If you want to Google these women, you will see the photo of Mary Jane Kelly. They didn't know much about her, so that photo is basically the only photo of her ever. And you cannot recognize her there because her face was so badly cut, destroyed. That apartment was on Dorset Street that she was renting, and she was laying on her bed when she was found. She was killed, and oh my goodness, just looks so awful, just terrible. And Jack the Ripper took her heart with him. So that is what he had wanted to take. So all of these women were prostitutes and a bit drunk. Though I don't believe that Mary Kelly was drunk. She was not drunk because she was basically just resting at her apartment when Jack the Ripper came to her door. That is what I got in this reading. That he came to her door and she was sober. And it was basically morning time. So it was like 10 a.m. We don't know the exact time, but I believe it was like around 9, 10. But she was sober, yeah, and she was not looking for a client for sex because she was just at her place. So she was not expecting anything, basically. So she had just opened the door for him, and he had attacked her and obviously wanted to possibly rape her, but of course take her life. But I actually got in this reading that she was not raped. So she was, of course, standing up for herself. She was fighting for her life. So he wasn't able to actually have sex with her. He just had to attack her very quickly and kill her. And he got so mad that is why he did so much mutilating to her. So that is basically what happened between the two. And he was really pouring out all of that frustration because he had not been killing in a while, for a month. So he had a lot of that built up anger within him, that psychopathic anger. So that is why he mutilated her body so badly. Even though it's not an excuse, but that's just what happened. So all of these other women were basically seduced because they were drunk and they were just outside on the street, looking for the next client. So in that way, they were a lot easier victims. So they didn't put up a struggle, really. They were just looking to hook up, and get paid. So that is why they believed that this was their next client. And of course, they just didn't guess that they would just get killed. And this is just what I got in this reading when I was connecting with these ladies. So I got a few bits of information, which I'm telling you guys here. So and this is basically what was happening. And the most interesting case, I think, it's with Elizabeth, because there were 3 eyewitnesses and they saw 2 men actually with her, a taller man and a shorter man. So this made it easier for me to do this investigation and this whole session to find out who the killer is. I have been investigating this case for quite some time, a long time ago, but then I returned to it just a while ago because I was drawn to it. So it really bothered me and I wanted to find out who the killer is. So I can tell you guys that it was 2 men. It was Aaron Kosminski and James Maybrick. James Maybrick wrote the Diary of Jack the Ripper, and he wrote the postcards and the letters that they send out to the police, to the people investigating the case. They were teasing them, which is very typical for a psychopath to do. Basically, they're just laughing behind their backs, you know, they're just having this fun. You're like, no, they cannot catch us, etc. And it is always easier for two guys to do it because you get caught in such a small amount of percent, you know. It is a lot harder to get you caught when there are two people doing it, you know. It's harder for people to guess. And these men were all the time around the crime scenes. So they were watching the whole situation, what was going on, you know, what had been going on when the police were involved, etc. Everybody was involved and searching for the killer, etc. So it was like entertainment to these men. And these both men were sort of mentally ill, or Aaron was even more. He was a former barber and a former butcher, so he could also do the killings, but James did most of the killings, and they both had sex with these ladies. But when they had sex, it was very fast because they were very horny, so it was very easy for them to ejaculate. And actually, Aaron's sperm was found by a DNA test. A Finnish man, Jari Louhelainen, actually found his DNA in 2014. He did this investigation. So I was happy to read about this. So that is why I know for a fact that Aaron was involved too. So then I figured that, okay, these two men were definitely both doing it. They were both seducing, talking to the ladies, and then the other one struck. After the sex, the other one struck and killed. So it was all very, very quick. And basically the victim could not do anything. Except with Elizabeth, they were actually talking more because there were these eyewitnesses who had been seeing her talk with these men and actually buying grapes too. So it was a bit of a longer interaction. And I also felt that first the other man would come up and talk to the woman and lead her to the other man, and then they would do what they did, you know, talk and seduce and have sex and kill. That is what I'm fully getting what happened. It was their pattern. And they were, of course, they were helping each other to deal with all of those murders so that they would not get caught very easily. And they knew the area also very well, or at least the other one of them did. So it was also easier to just leave the place, you know, leave the crime scene and know where you were going, know the streets and everything. So James was actually just British and he was from Liverpool, so he had been living there, so he knew the area very well. And Aaron was part Jewish and part Polish. So he was actually the one who wrote that chalk text on the wall about Jewish people not being accused for anything. So he wanted to be ironic in that way because he had been reading about that on some newspaper, because they were investigating if it is a Jewish person who was doing the killings or not. So basically this is all of what happened here. So I was just really baffled with, all of that process, how they worked together and what their minds were really. And Aaron was a single man, and James was actually married, and James's wife actually was prosecuted that she killed him. After everything, I'm sure that she knew that he had been the killer. He had been actually with malaria. He had been suffering from malaria. So he had been using arsenic for medication, and I'm sure that the arsenic was making him crazy. Of course, it's not healthy to have that daily. He was having it daily, so it was not good for his mental health, and it was making him act weird. And he was sexually very active. So it was showing, for example, that he had been unfaithful to his wife, and his wife had also been unfaithful to him. So they were not happy. And this has been mentioned in his diary as well, that he admitted that his heart had been broken, and saying like this is an excuse to kill women, to kill prostitutes, but he definitely had this anger towards women, and especially drunken prostitutes. So that was enough reason for him to kill. And then he had teamed up with Aaron, who was into cutting with knives, and he was actually diagnosed schizophrenic, so he was actually crazy. And he had raped his sister also one time. So he also had these like psychopathic tendencies in that way. So when you think about these facts, it's really natural that these two men were working together, and they even looked similar despite of their height, but they both had dark hair and this dark mustache that had been seen by people, and the clothing was similar as well. So basically, if you saw the other one, you might have thought that it is the same person. Of course, especially in the dark of the night, and with that overcoat on and that hat on, because I'm sure that they were being dressed very alike, just in case somebody was around to see the either of them. So they rarely actually were there to be seen as the two men. they were being careful that they would not be seen together. But obviously, where they were attacking these ladies, there was usually nobody there. It was just this dark of nights and dark streets, dark alley, you know. So it was very hard to see anybody there, or you know, to find out that these two men were doing these killings. But this is basically the whole situation, what was going on and what happened. And I think it's so sad that this case has still not been solved, because to me it is so clear. And now that I have connected with the spirits of the victims, I really feel it. I really feel their pain, as I have always when I've been reading and investigating this case. But right now, as I really feel that these men did commit these murders, I just feel this sadness, you know, for the victims. And I'm just happy to know that, in a way, I'm happy to know that this is what happened, because it just makes so much sense. They match the age categories, because Jack the Ripper was identified to be like in their 20s or 30s, and these both men were about that age, in their 30s. So it all matches together, really, when you are filling out that puzzle of the information. I just really need to read the diary. I haven't read it yet, but I need to get it and read it. So that will be like the final puzzle, final piece of the puzzle that I just want to get into. But yeah, I'm just sending so much love and light to these victims, and luckily they are in heaven, resting in peace, and they have their peace. And none of these victims never deserve this, and just makes me so sad. But luckily, as a psychic medium, I can connect with them and sending them so much love and light, you know. So this is it. Thanks guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and I would love to have your comments or questions or anything that might come up. So thank you, and don't forget that you can also have your own mediumship session with me via video call. I really suggest video call, because it's the best way to connect with all of the energies of the spirits. So get in touch with me if you want reading, and love and light. Namaste.